My name is Pastor Hal York, and welcome to Truth in the Trenches. Today we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 28, verse 2. By the transgression of a land many are its princes, but by a man of understanding and knowledge so it endures. That's the New American Standard. Another version says, when a land is in rebellion, it has many rulers, but with a discerning and knowledgeable person it endures. And probably the translation that sums it up the best might be the New Living Translation. When there is moral rot within a nation, its government topples easily. But wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability. There's an old saying that too many cooks spoil the soup or the broth. Too many people in charge brings problems. It corrupts the whole system. And as you read through the Old Testament and get into 1 Kings, it wasn't long after the 40-year reign of David and then the 40-year reign of his son Solomon that things began to unravel in the nation of Israel. And they unraveled surprisingly quickly. You can read about it in 1 Kings chapter 12. But a fight for power endured between the sons of Solomon, Jeroboam, and Rehoboam, and the end result was that the kingdom was divided in two. The 10 northern tribes became Israel. The 2 southern tribes were referred to as Judah. And from there, things just kept spiraling downward. Moral decay led to rebellion. Rebellion led to moral decay. When the heart is sinful in a moral freefall, that will have a profound impact on how a person views the authority or the rulers God has placed over them. If you look at our nation, and as we have seen moral decay increasing, we have also seen rebellion spread, a lack of respect and recognition of leadership, whether it's in the police or in the government. And we forget that the powers that be are ordained of God, and the rebellious heart could care less about that. But the reality is God sometimes gives people the leaders they want. And lawlessness increases, and he does this as a form of punishment. There are other times where he gives them the leaders they deserve, and this too is a form of punishment. They reap the consequences of their immoral choices and lifestyles. If you want to see what that looks like, read the book of Judges. And sometimes God gives them the leaders they need to bring them to repentance and bring them back to God. But when there is no respect for authority or the leaders God has placed over us, there spring up pockets of resistance, little subgroups seeking to overthrow the powers that be. People saying, if I were king, I would do this for you, seeking to sway the allegiance of the people. We see this as David first began with his son Absalom. He tried to usurp his kingdom, and he was eventually killed. And then you read in 1 Kings chapter 1, as David was nearing the end of his life, his son Adonijah exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And so he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen with 50 men to run before him. Obviously, kings were not voted in the Old Testament, so to pull this off, this rebellion, this treason, you need a following. You need an army, because if it doesn't succeed, your life is over. And we see this kind of activity played out several times in the Old Testament. We see it played out throughout history. Kings needed to sleep with one eye open. Historians tell us that for all the military might Rome had in the time of Christ, it was not defeated by an outside enemy, but rotted from the inside out. The moral decay of Rome is legendary. And the moral decay in that government was legendary. And Roman rulers seldom died of natural causes. Caesar himself was murdered by someone he thought he could trust. So in the Bible, and very often, you see to have many princes or rulers, officials, is not seen as a blessing. This speaks of how a large, complex, and multi-layered government can be a curse to a people. It's sent because of the transgression of a land. Due to the land's complete disconnection from the Lord, a large bureaucracy is necessary to monitor not just a general population, but to monitor those in government itself. They have to monitor each other, keeping each other in check. Otherwise, no one will survive. And we see this all the time. We see this in our own governments. They have to protect themselves from one another. And that's what a lot of the legislation and why there's so much bureaucracy is to protect each other from each other, even in government. And such is the nature of the fallen human heart: rebellion, selfishness, covetousness, lust for power, abuse of power when it's achieved. Kings play the madman and their people suffer for it. On the other hand, so the government sometimes suffer for the sins of the people. Such is the nature of evil. It's not hard to start a rebellion. God warned Israel early on, if you still trespass against me, I will set princes over you that shall hate you. Mischievous, odious princes, odious to God and malignant to the people. And one of the telltale marks of sin is its refusal to be ruled over, not even by God himself. Satan came to Eve and said, "You don't have to listen to God. You don't have to obey God. Listen to me. Obey me. I know what's best for you. I will make your life so much better, so much easier." And we see that time and time again in our nations today. On the other hand, godly leaders can be a wonderful blessing to a nation. Godly wisdom will prevent or address these problems of sin and so on, and rebellion. By godly leaders, people of understanding, things are kept in order, good order, or if disturbed, they are restored to the old ways again. So this is a very simple principle, but I think it's a very important one, and we need to realize that the Bible understands how life works. It understands how people think. It understands the progression and the temptations of sin. When there is moral rot within a nation, its government topples easily. By wise and knowledgeable leaders, but wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability. We think our military is going to save us, but all the military might in Rome could not save it from its own rot. And that may be the lot of our nation as well that we're living in both our nations here and south of the border. When God says enough is enough, that nation is done. God raises nations up and he puts them down. And we may think, like, how could the world exist without our two nations keeping peace? People have said that about every nation. Rome, Medes and the Persians, Babylon, and so on. But the world kept going on. And so we don't know how all this is going to play out, but we need to recognize that sin is a reproach to any people, any nation, and righteousness is a blessing. And when a land is in rebellion, it has many rulers, but with a discerning and knowledgeable person, it endures. And so may this give us something to think about. Give us something to think about in our day and age. And looking at my own heart, rebellion and sin come hand in hand. And so if we have a rebellious heart, we may be we're harboring sin somewhere in our heart, and it's taken root. And we see that all around us in our culture today, in our society. And as believers, we need to be the people leading the way to truth and peace and reconciliation and honoring and respecting those that God has placed over us in the Lord. They're there for our good. They may not recognize that, and they may not understand that, and they may not even practice that. But we still are under the authority of God, and they are under the authority of God, and we need to respect that God has put them there, then honor them as much as we can. So may this truth guide us and guard us in the trenches of life, and so seek to live our lives for the glory of God and for the good of others. May God bless.